Hey Fast Track, in today's video I'm going to show you how to do trigonometry using the hand trick. So here's what I mean by that. I'm going to show you how to evaluate trig functions without a calculator. So you guys are used to evaluating sine of 45 degrees on the calculator. So you go to your calculator and if you type in sine of 45 degrees, you get the calculator. So today I'm going to show you how to get that answer without a calculator, or in other words, an exact value. So keep in mind that the hand trick only works with the following degrees: 0 degrees, 30 degrees, 45 degrees, 60 degrees, and 90 degrees. So the first quadrant. And of course, the 30, 45, 60 come from your special right triangle. So the lesson in our last video. So before we head on to example 1, first let me show you where those degrees go on your left hand. So first thing is that you have to use your left hand. Notice that the pinky represents your x-axis and the thumb represents your y-axis. So if we label our degrees, the positive x-axis or the pinky represents 0 degrees. From here to here is 90 degrees. That's why the 90 goes here. Right in the middle of the first quadrant is right here, which is your middle finger. That is 45 degrees, and 30 degrees is here, and 60 degrees is there. So that's something you guys have to memorize: the placement of the 0, the 30, the 45, the 60, and the 90 degrees. Now the next thing you guys have to memorize is the following ratio. And so every time we're doing the sine of theta, you have to remember that we're going to do the square root of your bottom fingers over 2. For the cosine of theta, I need you guys to memorize the square root of top fingers over 2. For the tangent of theta, I need you guys to memorize the square root of bottom fingers over the square root of top fingers. Now that'll make more sense as we head on to example number 1. Now what about the reciprocal? So what about cotangent, secant, and cosecant? So if you guys remember, cosecant of theta is the reciprocal of sine. So to get the cosecant, all you have to do is flip that and you get your answer. The secant is the reciprocal of cosine, so the ratio will be 2 over the square root of top fingers. And of course, cotangent of theta is the reciprocal of tangent, so cotangent will be square root of top over square root of bottom. So now you know that, let's go to the following. So one more thing I need you guys to remember is that for the following problems, we have to use the reference angles. So that's the first thing. And remember, that's an acute angle from the terminal side to the closest x-axis. The next thing I need you guys to memorize is the following. You have to know that this is the first quadrant, this is the second quadrant, this is the third quadrant, and this is the fourth quadrant. Now the next thing, to get the sign for our solution, you have to memorize the following acronym. So the following acronym, ASTC, represents the following. A is for all, S is for students, T is for take, and C is for calculus. So all students take calculus. We're going to use that to help us memorize the following. And notice that I did it in counterclockwise, so I made a C once I drew it. Now, the all stands for all trig functions will be positive in the first quadrant. The S in students is for sine and its reciprocal, which is cosecant. So only sine and cosecant are positive in the second quadrant. The T is for tangent, and of course tangent and its reciprocal, which is cotangent. So only tangent and cotangent are positive in the third quadrant. And the final one, the C is for cosine. So cosine and its reciprocal, which is secant, are positive in the fourth quadrant. So keep that in mind because we're going to get our signs at the very end of each problem. So now that you know all of that, you're ready for example 1. So example 1 says evaluate the cosine of 120 degrees. So the very first thing I need you guys to do is look at your left hand. So let's identify our degrees first. So remember, this is 0 degrees, this is 90 degrees, halfway is 45, this is 30, and this is 60 degrees. Now that you have your left hand pulled out, first you have to find the reference angle. So we are doing the cosine of 120 degrees. So if I draw 120 degrees, that is in the second quadrant. And the very first step is to find the reference angle. So remember, the reference angle is the angle from the terminal side to the closest x-axis. So this angle right here. So if this is 120, to get our reference angle, you just subtract the 120 from 180. And you get 60. So our reference angle is 60. So 60 degrees will be your index finger. So I need you guys to pull back your index finger, and let's go back to our formulas. To do cosine of theta, you have to do square root of top finger over 2. So remember, you are using your left hand, and right now your index finger is pulled back. Now let's do the ratio. Square root of top finger. So if you look at your left hand, there is only one finger above the 60 degrees, which is the 90-degree angle. So the square root of top fingers, which is 1, divided by 2, is our ratio. Now let's simplify it and we will be done. Square root of 1 is 1. Bring down your denominator. The very last thing you have to do is check your sign. So here's how you do that. Remember that the 120-degree angle was in the second quadrant. So let's go back to our acronym. All students take calculus. Our angle was in the second quadrant, and keep in mind that only sine and cosecant are positive in the second quadrant. Since we are doing cosine, our answer will be negative. So the cosine of 120 degrees is equal to negative 1/2. Let's check that on the calculator. So the cosine of 120 degrees is negative 0.5. So let's keep all of our answers as a fraction because we are trying to find exact values. So let's try example number 2. We're going to evaluate the sine of 45 degrees. So the very first thing is to find the reference angle. 45 degrees, it's right here in the first quadrant. So the reference angle, the angle from the terminal side to the closest x-axis, and in this case, it's 45. So we're going to do the sine of 45 degrees. Next thing we're going to do is go to our left hand, and you have to know the degrees. So this is 0 degrees. This is 90, halfway is 45, 15 below is 30, 15 above is 60. Now, in this problem, we are doing 45 degrees. So the finger that you're pulling back is your middle finger. So pull that finger back, and let's do our ratio. So I need you guys to memorize that sine of theta is the square root of bottom fingers over 2. Now, if you have your middle finger pulled back, square root of bottom fingers. There are 2 fingers below your middle finger, so it's going to be the square root of 2 over 2. Now, square root of 2 is not a perfect square, so you leave it like that. Now, one more thing. Let's figure out if our sine is positive or negative. So keep in mind that the 45 degrees is in the first quadrant. And if you use your acronym, all students take calculus. All trig functions are positive in the first quadrant, so our final answer is positive. So this will be the last one we check on the calculator. So let's see if we are correct. The sine of 45 degrees. So our answer should be this decimal here, so let's try it. So we got square root of 2 over 2. And as you can see, our answer is correct. But since our answer is an exact value, we want to leave it as a fraction. We don't want a decimal. So on your classwork and on tests, your answer should be square root of 2 over 2. If you give me this decimal here, I'm going to mark it wrong. So remember, these answers are exact values. In other words, we want fractions or ratios. We do not want decimals. Go ahead and pause the video, try this, then come back after you've attempted the problem. So very first step is to find our reference angle. 330 degrees is in the fourth quadrant. The reference angle is the angle from the terminal side to the closest x-axis. One full revolution is 360. So 360 minus 330 is 30 degrees. So our reference angle is 30 degrees. So let's pull back let's look at our left hand. So let's label our degrees for practice so you can help you memorize it. That's 0 degrees, that's 90. This is 45, this is 30, and this is 60. Now our reference angle is 30, so I need you guys to pull your ring finger back. Since we are doing tangent, tangent of theta is the square root of bottom fingers over square root of top fingers. Now if your ring finger is pulled back, square root of bottom fingers. So bottom fingers is 1 over the square root of top fingers. There are 3 fingers above your ring finger, so square root of 3. Next thing I need you guys to do is to simplify the following. So the square root of 1 is 1. Square root of 3 is not a perfect square, so you bring it down. Now, we are not done because we have to rationalize the following. So multiply both numerator and denominator by square root of 3. And your final answer is square root of 3 over 3. We're forgetting one more thing though. We're forgetting to check our sine. So let's go back to our initial graph. So 330 degrees landed in the fourth quadrant. So all students take calculus. So only cosine and secant are positive in the fourth quadrant. Since we are doing tangent, our answer is negative. So the final answer is negative square root of 3 over 3. For example 3, the very first step is to find our reference angle. So 90, 180, somewhere right here. So the reference angle is the angle from the terminal side to the closest x-axis. So this angle right here. So 210 minus 180 is 30 degrees. So we're going to use 30 degrees as our reference angle. So let's go to our hand trick. So let's label our degrees. 0 degrees, 90 degrees, 45 degrees, 30, and 60. So keep in mind that we are doing cosecant, which is the reciprocal of sine. So in other words, we're going to be doing the sine of 30. And then once you do that, you're going to flip it to get the cosecant. So let's keep that in mind. So remember that sine is the square root of bottom fingers over 2. So let's set up that ratio first so we can flip it afterwards. So we're doing the sine of 30. So keep in mind that you are pulling your ring finger back. So pull this finger back. Square root of bottom fingers. There is 1 finger below your ring finger, which is the pinky. So square root of 1 over 2. But since we are doing cosecant, we are going to flip this. We're going to get the reciprocal. And of course, you're going to simplify that and get 2 over 1, which is 2. But don't forget to check your sine at the very end. So your angle landed in the third quadrant. All students take calculus. Remember that only tangent and cotangent are positive in the third quadrant, so your answer will be -2. Go ahead and try the following problem. Pause the video and then come back. Very first step, find your reference angle. So the angle from so notice that this is the initial side, the x-axis, and the y-axis is your terminal side. So the reference angle is 90 degrees. So keep that in mind. So let's look at our left hand. I'm gonna label it one more time so you guys can memorize your degrees. Since we are doing 90 degrees, you're pulling back your thumb. And since we are doing sine, we are looking at the square root of bottom fingers over 2. So if your thumb is pulled back, square root of bottom, so you have 4 fingers below that. So it is the square root of 4 over 2. If you reduce that, you get 2 over 2, which is 1. Don't forget to check your sign. So since our 90 degrees is right here, we have to keep the following in mind. All students take calculus. So since our degree is right here on the y-axis, if it is anything between these two, that means it is positive. And of course, we are doing sine, and sine is positive here and here. Therefore, our final answer will be positive. Go ahead and try the final problem. Pause the video and then come back. First thing is to find your reference angle. So 45 degrees, it's right here. The reference angle is from the terminal side to the positive x-axis, which is right here. In other words, it's also 45. So you should guys have this memorized. If your angle lies in the first quadrant, that will be your reference angle. So we are doing the cotangent of 45 degrees. Keep in mind that cotangent is the reciprocal of tangent. So in other words, we're going to be doing the tangent of 45 degrees. And once we have that ratio, we're going to do the reciprocal of that because it's cotangent. So let me go to my left hand. And for the last time, let me label my degrees. 0, 90, 45, 30, and 60. We're doing 45 degrees, so I need you guys to pull your middle finger back. Since we're doing tangent, tangent is square root of bottom fingers over square root of top fingers. Now your middle finger is pulled back, square root of bottom. We have 2 fingers at the bottom, so square root of 2 over square root of top fingers, which is also 2. And of course, square root of 2 over square root of 2 is 1. Don't forget, we have to find our sign, if it's positive or negative. The 45 degrees landed in the first quadrant. And if you remember your acronym, all students take calculus. All 6 trig functions are positive in the first quadrant. So your final answer is +1.